Okay, everyone, welcome to Algebra Online. Here we go. So to start off with, we are going to do 10-1, which is going to be square root graphs. So for today, all of our graphs are going to have a radical sign in them. And the easiest way to graph these is I say graph, you say table, and take my word on it that these are the 5 points you want to use today. And so, like normal, I'm just going to take this x, I'm going to plug it in for the x up here. So 2 times 0 is 0, and the square root of 0 is 0. Okay, do that for the rest of the table. I've already taken the time to figure out those points, so I'm just going to write those in real quick here. These are terrible decimals, these ones that I'm rounding to 1 decimal point. 1 decimal point's enough to get me what I need to know. And so now I'm going to graph this information. So I have starting at 0, 0, and then 1, 1.4, 2, 2, 3, and 2.4, 4, and 2.8. So it looks like my graph is going to look something like that. You'll notice that it doesn't go left, and that's always going to be the case. These graphs are never going to go left because think about square roots. If I plugged in -1, that would be 2 times -1, which would be -2, and the square root of -2 doesn't exist. There comes a spot on these graphs where they can't go left because you can't have the square root of a negative number. However, if we go ahead and I have this graphed on the computer and we graph this, you can see that this will go on to the right forever. Okay, and it does actually get to go up forever as well. It just takes a really long time to get very far. So it wouldn't be very interesting though if I just left these graphs right here at 0, 0 all the time. We are going to move these left, right, and up and down and make them taller and skinnier and all sorts of good stuff. So this is kind of the general formula that lets us move this graph around. And you can see that I have a negative sign, an A, an H, and then a K value. And each of those are going to have a very specific role in moving the graph around. So we'll play with it on my computer to start with. And so what we'll do is we'll start by seeing what happens if I make it negative. And it's going to be the red graph here. You can see that it turned it upside down. So if A is negative, it's going to point the graph downward. Okay, or it's going to flip it. A lot of times you'll hear us use the word flipped. Now let's look more at A. Let's say that I make A like a 2. Notice that it made my graph a lot taller. Okay, what if I make it like 0.5? It made it shorter. What about maybe like 1.1? Just barely taller. What if I make it 0.9? Just barely shorter. It turns out 1 is kind of the turning point for this. So the rule is that if A is less than 1, the graph is compressed, meaning it is shorter. If A is 1, nothing really happens. And then if A is greater than 1, we're going to call that stretched. So if I make it that 2 again, you'll see how stretched up there that gets. Now you have to understand that this is ignoring the negative sign. If I look back over here and let's make this a -2, notice that it is still an extra tall graph. It's just an upside down tall graph. So this one would be flipped and stretched. Now if I play with the H value is the number that's underneath the radical sign. So if I'm going to plug one in, I better make sure it's under the radical. And let's try just like a +2 and see what happens. It moved it left 2. What if I make it a -2? It moves it right 2. So it turns out H is going to move the graph left and right, but it's going to be opposite of what you think. If I had said +2, I would have thought that it was going to move right 2. And the reason that is because the original graph has this minus, or the original equation has this -h. So when you plug in a -2, what it sees is a double negative. Okay, and so that's why it becomes that +2, because a double negative is a positive, and that's why it moves left. So that's why that happens. Now looking over here, the k value should be tacked on at the end without being underneath the radical sign. So let's try adding 2 and see what happens. Moved it up. Okay, so if I do -2, moves it down. So the k value is going to move it up and down exactly as you would expect. So those 4 values, you're going to want to keep track of them, especially if you head into Algebra 2. You're going to see these pretty much every single chapter. So, all right, we'll see you in the next video. There isn't homework for this particular section. If I were you, I'd go ahead and start on the next video and get the next homework going, because the first few sections of this are kind of confusing and the videos are a little long. So good luck. Let me know if you have questions.